You're listening to Coast Business Radio with Mike Ryan.
Having grown up on the Gold Coast, Meaghan Scanlon is committed to Queensland's tourism industry. Meaghan is the Assistant Minister for Tourism Industry Development in the Queensland Government. Meaghan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Mike. Great to be with you.
Now, tell us about your portfolio responsibilities and achievements you are most proud of this term.
There's a lot of them. So my responsibilities are, of course, to assist our Tourism Minister, Kate Jones, in her role. Obviously, tourism is a huge industry in Queensland, and being a born and bred Gold Coaster myself, it's a particularly big industry in this city. So there's a lot to do in terms of, engaging with stakeholders, making sure that we're assisting in creating new products and also enhancing some of the products we already have here in Queensland, but also making sure that we're marketing and tapping into all of those really crucial countries and states to make sure that we increase visitation and increase spend in this state. So some of the things I suppose I'm most proud of, particularly from a Gold Coast perspective, are the underwater dive site that we've been able to work with the City of Gold Coast around constructing, which I think will be really exciting and certainly a very new offering here on the Gold Coast. And of course, the Commonwealth Games, and not only the event itself, but what we've been able to achieve following that event. Not only, of course, was there all of the infrastructure that was built that's now, left a legacy for sporting clubs and our road networks and the light rail, but it's allowed us to really leverage on securing even more events to fill some of those venues. And so that's been a really exciting opportunity to be a part of and leave a bit of a legacy for the city that I've grown up in.
And a lovely part of the world too, but tourism itself has been walloped by the coronavirus or COVID-19. Many are concerned it may not recover. What's the Queensland Government doing about this? And do you see the recovery being slow and steady, or as some are hoping that it will be a very sharp curve?
Yeah, look, it's no doubt been really a tough time for a lot of tourism operators all over Queensland and all over the country and the world. It's particularly difficult when, of course, border closures come into effect, when people can't travel and, all around those social distancing rules. But it's all been put in place for the right reason, to keep us all healthy and safe. Early on, I'm not sure if you're aware, we in February, I think from memory, we announced a $27 million package, which was effectively an aid package for our tourism industry. So that included things like targeted tourism promotion, a specific targeted promotion for tropical North Queensland and the Gold Coast region, waiving fees for a number of our tourism operators around, lease payments, jetty fees, fees associated with liquor licensing, a range of things early on. But of course, since then, we've gone into further restrictions, and so that's really had a big impact on people. And it's one of the reasons we advocated quite heavily for a wage subsidy, because a lot of these businesses were not getting that revenue through, and we wanted to make sure that they kept their employees on, they kept that relationship ongoing, so that when we come out of this hibernation period, they can kickstart again, and those people that they've trained up can remain on the books and get them working again. So we've been working on a bit of a plan around a roadmap forward, and hopefully that will start to help a lot of these operators. Of course. We have to do this gradually, because we need to be careful that we don't end up like other countries where we lift restrictions too quickly and we see a spike of cases and then we have to shut things down even further. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but we're very keen to get the economy moving again and get people working again. We've just got to make sure we're careful around that. And so in the meantime, we've provided a range of initiatives around payroll tax relief, job support loans, a $500 utility bill rebate for businesses, things that will allow them to get through this hibernation period so we can get to the other side of things. But no doubt, as I said, it will take some time, and I think the focus needs to be on intrastate travel, then interstate travel, and then we can look further from that going forward. But it is going to be a slightly slower process than probably people would ideally like, but it's there for a really good reason.
Okay, the other question on everybody's lips on the Gold Coast, especially if you want to visit interstate other borders, when do we see them being relaxed?
Look, this was a decision that certainly wasn't taken lightly by the Premier. It was based on expert health advice, and it still continues to be. I know it's frustrating for people who live sort of in the southern Gold Coast who I know travel across the border quite frequently. Look, I don't have any news as of yet. They're there, that border restriction is there for a good reason, to try and minimise the cases we're seeing coming into Queensland. We know that some of our cases, of course, were from people moving from those hotspots back into Queensland. So we want to minimise that as much as possible so we can suppress any community transmission. But, I suppose the message would be if we keep up the good work that we've been doing so far around keeping those numbers down, and if other states can do the same thing, then we can certainly look at that going forward. But we just, as I said, we need to be careful that we don't lift things too quickly and end up with a spike that's uncontrolled.
Tell us your thoughts on the Queensland government's bid for Virgin. I can understand the reasoning behind it. On one hand, I think it's a great idea. On the other side of the coin, getting involved in an airline that owes $7 billion plus, maybe not such a great idea.
Look, we've been really clear that we certainly won't be investing any of Queensland's money unless it stacks up. It's got to be the right decision for the government and the right decision in the best interest of all Queenslanders. The reality is that having only one airline, a monopoly in the airline industry, catastrophic, particularly for regional Queensland when it comes to tourism and the tourism economy. We know when there's only one airline that prices go up in terms of fares, and when prices go up, it means you generally have less people travelling and less people who don't have that money in their pocket to spend businesses when they hit the ground. So we've been really focused on trying to make sure we have that two-line airline industry so that there's some competition. To put it in perspective, for the Gold Coast, I think it's something like 46% of inbound domestic travel is through Virgin for coming through the Brisbane and Gold Coast airports for people domestically staying on the coast. So that's a pretty significant portion of people travelling through that airline, and it's something like nearly $2 billion in terms of the economic impact. So if we lose that second airline, it will no doubt have an impact on our industry, but at the end of the day, it all needs to stack up. And one of the ideas that has been floated has been an equity stake in the company, but we're very flexible and open to different models.
Can you tell us also the lifting of restrictions from this weekend, which this goes to air on Saturday, so from today? Is it 10 or 20 people in a say restaurant on the Gold Coast, and is it only 10 in Brisbane, or am I wrong?
So it's only 10 on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane. The Outback has some slightly different rules,
right,
just obviously based on their numbers. And the Outback is a very, it's a far more people are far more spread apart than they are in southeast Queensland. So as of Saturday, people can have in cafes, in restaurants, you can have people dining in, but they need to adhere to all of those checklists, the COVID-safe checklists that we've put out for each of those industries. But in stage 1, it's only 10 people. In stage 2, it's 20, but at the moment, just the 10.
Just the thought of sitting down at a table, having that coldie with the footy on, well, maybe in 2 weeks' time, the footy on, and just munching into a burger. I mean, to me, that's nirvana.
Yes, I've been phone calling a lot of residents in my electorate, and that is the sentiment from everyone that I think everyone's really looking forward to.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, what's your vision for the Gold Coast before we finish up?
Look, I'm a born and bred Gold Coaster, and the vision I have is that for young people growing up in this city, that they're able to stay here and find stable, secure employment, and that requires a whole range of things to happen. But I think the first thing is obviously continuing to strengthen the industries we know do really well here, so tourism, but also diversifying a little bit to provide some more options for people so they don't have to travel away. A lot of my friends went to Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne to get jobs because there just weren't those options down here, and so that's something that I'm really interested in pursuing, and also making our city, even better. So creating more big infrastructure projects, particularly around that road and public transport space, to make it easier for people to move around, and making sure we continue to capitalise on the great assets we already have.
An amazing part of the world, the Gold Coast. These beaches have been only missing one thing of late, and that was actually two things: fish and chips and a beer. And soon we can start to do that. How exciting is that?
It's very good to see that we're starting to go back to normality.
That's right. I can't wait. Let me tell you. Look, Meaghan Scanlon, the Assistant Minister for Tourism Industry Development, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike.